Welcome back, everybody. Cinemaverse Studio is here, and if you haven't already taken a deep breath, now is the time to do it, because the boys just detonated a brand new series finale trailer for Season 5, Episode 8. And there is an extraordinary amount of brand new footage packed into every single second of it. We're talking new scenes, new character moments, new dialogue, and a level of emotional and narrative weight that honestly feels like the show is already saying goodbye. This isn't just a trailer, this is a declaration. So we are going to go through this thing completely, every frame, every cut, every voiceover line, every background detail, and pull out everything that matters. Because with a show this layered, the details are everything. The finale is officially titled Blood and Bone, and that title is not an accident. It's a direct callback to a speech Homelander delivered back in Payback, where he looked Butcher dead in the eyes and suggested they share a fate that is something a little more scorched earth, shock and awe, blood and bone. The writers chose that phrase as the title of the final chapter of the entire series, and that choice alone tells you something crucial about how this story ends. Not with a negotiated peace, not with a quiet resolution, but with two immovable forces colliding at full velocity. This is not going to be clean. This is going to be everything.
The trailer opens not with action, not with explosions, but with something far more unsettling: silence. And then, cutting through that silence like a blade, comes the voice of Billy Butcher. Carl Urban delivers it with that specific brand of exhaustion that only comes from a man who has been carrying the same war for 7 years and has finally, absolutely run out of patience. The voiceover says it plainly and without hesitation: we need to end the whole bloody notion of soups. Now here's what makes this opening so cinematically smart. That line is pulled from a completely different scene and laid over footage of Butcher walking into a meeting room with the surviving members of the team. The editors are doing something deliberate here. They are separating the philosophy from the man, showing us that this isn't just Butcher having a bad day. This is a resolved, long-considered position. He has looked at the world, at everything that Compound V and Vought and Homelander have made it, and he has arrived at a conclusion. The only way forward is extinction, not of humanity, of superpowers themselves, every single soup on the planet. This is Butcher's virus, a weapon capable of wiping all soups off the map, and as he reaches for it in this trailer, one thing is absolutely clear: it is now ready. What's interesting is what this room full of survivors looks like. These are not fresh soldiers. These are people held together by grief and stubbornness. Frenchie is gone. The team has taken damage that can't be undone. And yet here they are, mapping out one final assault, because
Before we move forward, we need to address the loss that hangs over this entire trailer like a storm cloud. Frenchie is dead, and the way his death happened makes it hit even harder when you understand the full context. Frenchie turned on the uranium machine while he and Homelander were both inside it, a last act of defiance to protect Kimiko and Sister Sage, with Homelander escaping and Frenchie suffering the devastating consequences. A few behind-the-scenes clips that surfaced online showed a deleted version of the moment where Homelander actually drags a single finger through Frenchie's stomach, the wound then being exposed to radiation and accelerating his death far beyond what the blood loss alone would have caused. The fact that scene was cut is genuinely baffling, because it would have given Frenchie the visceral, brutal goodbye his arc deserved. But what makes the trailer land so hard in connection to this is a brief comedic moment, and yes, this show uses comedy like a knife, where Homelander is shown dancing with Frenchie's body. Dancing with the man he just murdered, quipping that Frenchie must have never danced a day in his life, and so his first dance is happening right now, post-mortem, courtesy of the man who ended him. It's grotesque. It's the kind of joke that makes you laugh and then feel terrible about laughing. It's exactly the kind of thing this show does better than almost anything else on television. The critical narrative thread here is the virus. Kimiko is carrying the weapon, and according to circulating theories, she may be secretly infected with the virus during the fight, meaning Homelander could end up catching it when he attacks her. That would be a devastating and brilliantly poetic ending for the most powerful being on the planet, not defeated by a superior force, but by his own compulsion to destroy things he perceives as beneath him.
Now the trailer shifts and the scale expands enormously. We see the White House, and everything about the framing tells you this is the final battleground. According to multiple sources, a large portion of the finale's budget went directly into the White House sequences, featuring heavy environmental destruction and intense confrontations as Homelander establishes absolute dominance on national television. The show has always used American iconography as a vehicle for its satire. Vaught's Towers, the Seven's headquarters, Capitol Hill, but placing the climax inside the White House is the ultimate statement. This is where American power lives. This is where Homelander intends to declare himself God. And this is where the boys are coming to burn it all down. The final face-off appears to be directly honoring the original comics, with Butcher and his team infiltrating the White House, with Kimiko and the Supe virus in hand. There was a promotional poster released that almost perfectly recreated the iconic comic book panel, Butcher on the White House lawn, Homelander hovering above with an army of Supes behind him. Whether the finale delivers that exact image or twists it based on budget constraints is unclear, but the intent is unmistakable. They want you to feel the weight of that source material. Mother's Milk and Butcher are shown grabbing crowbars, which is such a quintessentially boys' image, a crowbar against a man who can fly and shoot lasers from his eyes. And yet there is something deeply satisfying about that image, because that's always been this show's central argument.
We cut to the interior of what appears to be the White House, and we get a charged two-shot, the Deep and Oh Father, side by side, both looking at something off-camera with expressions that can only be described as men who know they have run out of time. Then Homelander enters the frame, and the atmosphere shifts immediately. Both men look like they are trying not to visibly tremble. The Deep situation is particularly grim. After last episode's events where he failed catastrophically and was effectively banned from every body of water on Earth, the man is a hollowed-out shell, the king of the ocean, permanently landlocked. The Samuel Jackson cameo sequence delivered what may be the funniest and most devastating one-liner of the season, essentially telling the Deep that if he stepped into even a puddle, he was a dead man. So here he stands, stripped of his powers, stripped of his relevance, stripped of the water that defined him, staring at the one person whose approval he has chased across 5 seasons, who now looks at him like he is furniture. Oh Father's terror is different in quality. He's not broken, he's calculating risk in real time. His entire project with Homelander was built on patience and manipulation, slowly conditioning the public to accept Homelander.
Let's talk about what this trailer is really showing us with Homelander, because every cut we get of Anthony Starr in this footage carries a different texture of unraveler. This is a man who has spent 5 seasons teetering on the edge of total psychotic collapse, always pulled back at the last second by ego, by fear of public perception, by the voice of Stillwell in his head telling him to maintain some level of control. But that restraint is gone now, completely gone. There was a scene several seasons ago, one of the most quietly terrifying moments the show has ever produced, where Homelander laid out his actual plan for Annie in methodical, chilling detail. First, destroy all communication infrastructure. Then erase New York, a logical, step-by-step blueprint for ending civilization from a man who smiled while describing it. That scene proved Homelander, when he actually thinks, is more dangerous than anyone gives him credit for. The tragedy is that the writers pivoted away from that calculating version of him and let him become increasingly reactive and emotionally volatile, fueled entirely by the Stillwell hallucinations whispers, until he stopped strategizing and started simply destroying.
This explosive final chapter premieres globally on Prime Video on May 20th.
One of the most quietly devastating frames in the entire trailer lasts approximately 2 seconds, and it is more emotionally effective than most shows manage in an entire season. We see Kimiko, alone, just before the operation begins, and she is crying. A single tear running down the face of the most physically lethal person in this group. Kimiko doesn't cry easily. She has survived things that would shatter most people, but Frenchie was her anchor. He was the person who learned to communicate with her when she had no words. He was the one who saw her as a person, not a weapon, long before anyone else did. And now he's gone, and she's standing at the threshold of a mission she knows she may not come back from, and she doesn't care. Frenchie's death in Kimiko's arms has confirmed that the show will no longer hold anything back before the finale. His death was sadder and more personal for the core group than anything the show has done before. In that single frame of Kimiko's tear, the show encapsulates an entire relationship, an entire grief arc, and an entire motivation for what she's about to do. She's not going into that White House to survive. She's going in because anything is worth it if Homelander ends.
A quick but significant cut shows Huey and Mother's Milk slipping into the White House through what appears to be a side access point, moving quietly, staying low, moving with the kind of practiced caution that comes from years of fighting people who can throw cars. This shot matters because of what it represents, the original team, or what's left of it, together one final time, executing one final plan. Circulating leak theories suggest Huey could potentially become a Supe himself in the finale, and while that would be an enormous twist for a character who has always been the show's everyman anchor, it would also be a devastating commentary on the show's central theme. Huey started this journey as a regular person, trying to fight gods without becoming one. If he ends it by becoming something more than human, what does that say about the cost of this war? What does that say about whether the good guys actually won or just became a different version of what they were fighting?
The trailer cuts to something that feels almost quiet by comparison: the cabin. Specifically, the same remote location established in Season 2, the same space where Homelander brought Ryan, where doppelganger scenes played out in deeply unsettling fashion, where Ryan nearly killed Stormfront and Becca died. This place carries the entire emotional history of the father-son relationship at the heart of this show. And here they are again, Homelander and Ryan, in that space, clearly in the middle of something significant. Ryan is shown in what appears to be an emotional reunion with his biological father, Homelander, in this sequence. The framing is crucial. This isn't presented as a triumphant reconciliation. The color palette is cold. The body language is uncertain. Ryan looks like someone standing at a crossroads who knows that whatever direction he chooses will define the rest of his life. And Homelander looks like a man who is using every remaining tool he has to make Ryan choose him. As the only naturally born Supe, Ryan is powerful enough to rival his father, and the battle for his soul between Homelander and Butcher has driven the show's later seasons. This scene in the trailer is that battle reaching its crescendo. Whatever Ryan decides in this cabin, or in the White House, or on whatever battlefield this all converges on, is going to be the emotional resolution of the entire series. Not the virus, not the crowbar, not the politics. Ryan, the kid caught between two fathers and two versions of what power means.
There's a charged, fast sequence of Annie, Starlight, moving through the White House toward the Deep, and every piece of contextual information we have suggests this is the scene where she finally kills him. Chase Crawford has delivered one of the most genuinely complex villain performances of the entire series, making you despise the Deep completely while also understanding exactly how he got there. Every terrible decision rooted in a specific kind of wounded ego and desperate need for validation that is, unfortunately, deeply recognizable. Crawford confirmed in a recent interview that his character's ending was designed as a narrative completion of the Season 1 moment when he sexually assaulted Annie. That's the gravitational center of his entire arc, and the show is pulling everything back toward it for the final chapter. According to circulating spoiler information, Starlight kills the Deep in this confrontation. There will almost certainly be a moment of confrontation before it happens, words exchanged, perhaps a beat where the Deep tries something, anything, but ultimately the ending is physical and final. The Deep has needed to face this reckoning for years. He has rejected redemption more consistently than almost any character in modern television. Not through weakness, but through active, conscious choice. His ending is not a tragedy. It is a consequence.
Then we get the image that crystallizes everything. Butcher physically holding the completed superhero virus. The camera lingers on it. This is the weapon that has been the show's MacGuffin from multiple seasons. Theorized, built, lost, rebuilt, sacrificed for. And here it is in the hands of a man who has made it very clear that he will use it without hesitation, regardless of who gets caught in the radius. The moral architecture around the virus has always been the show's most interesting ethical puzzle. Huey didn't want to use it because it would kill people like Annie and Kimiko and Ryan. Butcher's position has consistently been that the calculus is simple. One weapon ends one war. The collateral damage is acceptable to him in a way it categorically is not to anyone else on his team. The psychic flashback from last episode, showing us who Butcher was before any of this, long before Becca, long before Homelander, made that darkness in him explicit and undeniable. He walked out of that CIA mission as the sole survivor not because of luck, but because of the choices he made. He has always been willing to sacrifice anyone. The virus is just the logical endpoint of a personality that was already there. One of the more dramatic leak theories suggests Butcher may himself become the final villain of the series, not Homelander, and that Huey killing Butcher to save the world would provide a full-circle moment for Huey's entire character arc. If that's true, it would be the most devastating and most earned conclusion this show could possibly deliver. Huey started as the everyman, the one who got pulled into this world by tragedy, the one whose decency was always the show's moral compass. Having him be the one who ends Butcher would be an extraordinary piece of storytelling.
There's a brief blink-and-miss-it shot in the trailer of someone landing on a beachfront. The lighting is warm. The chaos of the White House feels very far away. Even with frame-by-frame analysis, the identity of this person is deliberately obscured. The show is clearly protecting this reveal. But the context of the shot is significant. It feels after. This feels like the other side of the storm. Whoever is landing on that beach has survived whatever happens in that White House, and they are somewhere peaceful, somewhere the fight hasn't reached. Whether that's a happy ending or a bittersweet one depends entirely on who it is. One version of the circulating spoiler material suggests Butcher ends up living peacefully as a quiet man, which would be an almost cruel irony for a character who has defined himself entirely by war. The beach shot could be connected to that, or it could be Ryan, or Annie. The show is making you work for it, and that's exactly right. The identity of who walks away should be earned in the episode itself, not handed to you in a trailer. A quick shot of Ashley sprinting through underground tunnels, almost certainly passageways running beneath the White House. She is moving fast, moving alone, moving with the panicked energy of someone who has just seen something they cannot unsee. Ashley witnesses Homelander kill O-Father and flees in terror, and this tunnel shot appears to be that escape. She doesn't fight back. She doesn't try to do anything heroic. She runs, because Ashley Barrett has always been the show's portrait of complicity, of what it looks like to be smart enough to know you're serving a monster and too scared to stop. Her survival, if the trailer is telegraphing it correctly, would be a pointed choice by the writers. She gets to live with what she chose.
Two major characters are completely absent from this trailer, and their absences are as significant as anything that appears on screen. Sister Sage, one of the most compelling additions to Season 5, does not appear anywhere in this footage. After everything she's been through, the question of where her story ends is wide open. Does she survive? Does she choose a side in the final battle? The silence around her is deliberate. Soldier Boy is similarly absent, and that absence has been confirmed intentionally. The showrunner stated directly that Jensen Ackles' real final scene was the Impala callback before Homelander locked him back in cryo at the end of Episode 7. That was treated as his genuine farewell. There may be a brief post-credits moment, but he is not in the main finale narrative. That is both hilarious and frustrating in equal measure. A character who consumed significant amounts of Season 5's storyline simply exits before the bill comes due. The working theory is that any post-credit Soldier Boy scene will function as setup for the Vought Rising prequel series, and the internet's reaction to that is going to be loud.
Let's end where the trailer really ends emotionally, with the question of Ryan. Because even if the virus works, even if Homelander falls, even if the boys somehow survive this, what does the world look like afterward? Ryan is the only naturally born Supe. He never had Compound V introduced into his system, which means if the virus is specifically designed to target Compound V, it may simply not affect him. He could emerge from the finale as the last Supe standing on Earth, the last one, not by design but by biology, not because he's the strongest or the most ruthless, but because of the accident of how he was born. That is an extraordinary place to leave a character. A teenage boy with the power of a god in a world that just decided gods are unacceptable, and he's the only one left. What does Ryan do with that? What does the world do with Ryan? One leak theory suggests Ryan sees the chaos from afar and returns to fight, a moment of choosing humanity over the father who tried to claim him. And if Ryan is ultimately the last Supe in the world, then the final image of this entire 7-year story might be a kid standing alone with more power than any human being should have, having to decide every single day what kind of person he wants to be. That's not a resolution. That's a beginning. And maybe that's the most honest thing this show could say.
When The Hollywood Reporter asked showrunner Eric Kripke whether he was excited about the finale, his response was telling. Excited was the wrong word. What he felt was anxious, hoping desperately that they could land the plane. That anxiety lives in this trailer. It breathes through every cut, every voiceover line, every lingering close-up of a face bracing for what comes next. This show has always been about the gap between the stories we tell about power and the reality of what power actually does to people. It has been savage and funny and heartbreaking and relentlessly honest about the world it was satirizing, a world that, if anything, caught up to it. The Boys Season 5 finale, Blood and Bone, premieres globally on Prime Video on May 20th, 2026, with an early theatrical screening available on May 19th. However this ends, whether it sticks the landing with grace or goes out in spectacular, chaotic flames, it has earned the right to try. 7 years, 40 episodes, 1 war. Let's see how it ends. Drop every theory, every reaction, every emotion in the comments below. The confident ones, the anxious ones, the ones you've been turning over in your head since Episode 7 left you absolutely devastated. Cinemaverse Studios' full Episode 8 reaction and complete breakdown video will post immediately after the finale drops. Make sure your notifications are on so you catch it the moment it goes live. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the other side of the finale. Cinemaverse Studio, out.